there is a massive information, but of course it's mainly the mainstream news, which are I would say the main source for most of the people to tune into, and so their perception is that this is the truth, this is real, but in fact they are not aware that this is just like it's virtual reality. You know? It's just a script from somebody who is explaining something about something which happened, and I mean, you have no idea if it's true or false, if it's a fragmented part of reality, and so forth. So, and people are living in this kind of virtual reality without knowing. So they're like in a prison, in a virtual prison, without knowing it. And one of my goals in the book is to draw people's attention to the fact that they are living in this virtual reality, that they start to understand that their perception is being manipulated, that they are being indoctrinated on a permanent base, and that this process has been going on for decades.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm joined by Johan Cools. Let me tell you about this awesome dude and what he's been up to, okay? Johan is an architect by trade, and he spent 10 years as the city architect for Belgium's historic Bruges. At the age of 30, he started really dedicating himself to self-realization and self-development and personal excellence, and has remained steadfast in that ever since. He suffered and witnessed the loss of a few family members through cancer, and that inspired him to go on this deep dive of research. And he spent a decade strong researching cancer and health, and he ended up writing a book called Modern Lifestyle Kills that came from that research. And also that research allowed him a lot of mentoring, and he became a mentor of sorts to a wide variety of folks, some of them in the professional athletic sphere. And he comes from that background too. So he's got a lot of experience in a lot of things. He wrote a second book, which was inspired by the recent health crisis. And that tackles the subconscious and how it becomes hijacked, if you will, which we talk about a lot on this show, if you've been following along at home. So it's a great honor to welcome Johan Cools. Thank you for being in, brother. I appreciate your time.
Well, I mean, thank you, first of all, myself for having me in this podcast. I mean, it's a great pleasure and honor to have this interview and discussion with you about all these different interesting topics. I'm sure that all these topics also carry your interest.
Absolutely, I couldn't believe it. I was reading the chapter that you wrote for that big book. What's the name of that publication? That monster of a book that you have that. It's
a complicated title. I even can't remember it myself. It's about the media sphere.
Yeah, that's why I wore this shirt for you. See. So I was reading a lot of your stuff, and I thought, oh my God, I was really blown away. I thought that, you have put it all together in a way that I've been talking about on the show, and I've been talking about in life and thinking about, and to see all those things put so succinctly and scientifically with all these data points and evidence and footnotes and references to back it up. I was just like, wow. I was really blown away. I could not believe all the work that you had done in bringing all of this into, a streamlined source. And so, and then learning about your background in athletics and how you've been working. I've had a few people on the show. One, Dr. Don Wood, who works with high performance athletes, and has also figured out what you figured out, that, in order for us to achieve optimal performance. In order for us to break our record, not just our record, but any record, to go beyond what we felt and thought was capable, we need to be aware that there may be past trauma and past conditioning that is keeping us from busting out of that, that old way of doing things. And so it's very, very cool to be talking to you right now. And you're so perfect for this podcast. It's crazy.
Thank you very much for the compliments. And in fact, it's quite interesting story, that chapter, because I explained that, English is my third language. So I'm used, of course, to have conversations in English because of my business background, doing 30 years of international business. So that's not an issue. But the issue is when somebody asks you to write an academic chapter. A chapter which will be published in an academic book, which is going towards all the universities, that's a completely different story, because the language which you are supposed to use in this kind of publications, and also, I would say, the scientific background, and you really have to, let's say, prove your point to a certain extent, with citations and things like that. It was really a big challenge for me to write that chapter, but I'm very happy that I did it. I was invited by in fact, Emeritus Professor Schaefer, which I will introduce to you as well, because he's a very interesting, altruistic guy. I really love this guy. He's amazing. His background is psychology. He's a professor of psychology, and he's been working on like 30 years on one project, which is related to the chapter, to the book. So
cool.
And when I learned to know him, and I explained a little bit what I was up to and things like that, he said, "Why don't you write a chapter?" And I said, "What am I going to write about? I'm not an academic. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a self-made autodidact, which has a broad kind of interest." You see, so. And he said, "Well, write about the subconscious." And then I agreed on that. And that's how I eventually started writing that chapter. And the interesting thing is that when you start writing a chapter or something like that, it brings you all sorts of ideas. And it also brings introspection, because while you are writing, you are applying the methods which you are proposing, you see? So it's bringing more valuable insights, and I think that counts also for a lot of other authors, that they start understanding things deeper, and so it was a very, very interesting exercise, which enabled me to take the next step, which is the book, the second book I'm currently writing, Brain Upgrade for Brain Pandemics.
Yes.
And that is going to, let's say, elaborate even much more, not only on the subconscious, but also on other issues which are related to performance in general in life. I'm not only talking about sport performance, I'm talking about performance in any important area of your life. So that could be finances, it could be family, it could be spiritual contribution, everything.
Yes.
And there is a central point there, which is always coming back, and it's coherence.
Yes.
You talked about blockages and traumas, which are in the subconscious mind and things like that, and that they are in fact limiting factors to perform on a higher level, or even to become more conscious about your unconscious.
That's right.
When you read my chapter, and if you read my book, there is a special interest on what I call the 4 levels of consciousness. Right. And the thing is that a lot of people are in the lowest level of consciousness. They are what I call, they are unconscious ignorant, right? Which means that they are not aware that they are ignorant about a certain, let's say, field of knowledge or a certain topic or whatever, And the thing is that if you're not aware of your unconscious incompetence, I mean, you basically are not aware of the problem.
No.
And if you're not aware of a problem, how can you then solve the problem?
Right. You can't even hear the problem. You can't.
Oh.
This is the problem with that level. And it's so prevalent and so conditioned into our society. You know, you really hit, you hit the nail on the head writing about this in your chapter, and I'm sure you will in your book and have in your book as well. But like there's examples of this everywhere. There's such a disconnect between the information that is attempting to be, given, and then the way that it's being received, or I should say, censored and, kind of dismissed or labeled and propagandized as, it's all that's false. That's dangerous.
I mean, basically, that is the big problem nowadays. There is a massive information, but of course, it's mainly the mainstream news, which are I would say, the main source for most of the people to tune into, and so their perception is that this is the truth. This is real, but in fact, they are not aware that this is just like it's virtual reality. You know? It's just a script from somebody who is explaining something about something which happened, and I mean, you have no idea if it's true or false, if it's a fragmented part of reality, and so forth. So, and people are living in this kind of virtual reality without knowing. So they're like in a prison, in a virtual prison, without knowing it. And one of my goals in the book is to draw people's attention to the fact that they are living in this virtual reality, that they start to understand that their perception is being manipulated, that they are being indoctrinated on a permanent base, and that this process has been going on for decades. I mean, even for centuries.
Yes, so, in a very real way for centuries, because even before the printing press, the ruling class attempted to control the population through the narrative, through the stories they were telling. It was the only way they could.
Precisely. And when you look at history, it's quite interesting. It's always the fear factor which is used.
Oh, for every time. Nothing. There's no greater manipulator than fear. And fear, once they figured that out, then they really started to do some atrocious things. Some of the events that shaped our society were deliberate, traumatic, events staged for everyone to see, and deliberately so that effect could then create the environment of fear, and they could just unleash they could go further than they went before. We've seen it happen in the last 30 years several times. These events that cause everyone to be very, very scared for their lives. Events that will replay in their mind, and the conditioning and the trauma will stay embedded for years to come. I mean, I live in New York City, and you see people, when a plane goes by too low and too far, overhead, many of us will just stop and look and be like, what's that guy doing so low? The events become ingrained. That's what they want. That's trauma. That's how they keep the fear going. And there's no greater and easier way to manipulate a population or a person than fear. So what I love about your chapter is you talk about how you could not orchestrate this kind of fear without the media. But you need outlets. And since the dawn of the television and the newscast, and TV programming, that has become the central and easiest way for the people who are pulling these strings, the same people, to put their narrative. And the effect that it's having on society is catastrophic in every way. And that's partially like a very simple and small summary of your chapter, but it's brilliant and it's true. It's absolutely true.
No, I mean, the fear factor, of course, is there are a few issues with the fear factor, which are a lot of people are not aware of. Is that when the flight fight, let's say, when you're going into a flight fight, when your reptilian brain is being activated, then the blood of your prefrontal cortex and is pushed towards the reptilian brain, right?
Right.
So this means that your rational and logical mind is not working well anymore.
Right. Literally.
Yes, literally. And secondly, you get this kind of tunnel vision. Why? Yeah. You're focusing on the danger, right? Which means that your virtual reality, or your image is even more distorted and limited to that specific fear factor, right? Now, and it's quite interesting then to discuss the FIFI concept, which is also explained in that chapter.
Yeah, can you? I love this concept. Can you tell everyone what the FIFI concept is?
Yeah,
this is fantastic.
This is FIFI.
That's FIFI.
That's FIFI. It's a giraffe. It's one of my favorite questions when I talk to people. Is why does a giraffe has a long neck? Mm-hmm. It sounds like an obvious question, and then you get this kind of answers like, the giraffe with the longest neck could survive, or something like this.
Yeah.
Or because he then can eat the leaves, the leaves high up in the tree or something. This guy, they know a little bit what's going on,
right?
But they're really, in fact, they're clueless about the specific process is going on. And I explain this also in that chapter, because it's very important to know these certain criteria, how you can actually change your DNA, morphogenetic, and change your body and create a longer neck. So the thing is that when you think about giraffes before they were a giraffe, then you would think about an okapi. Okapi. It's not like a giraffe. It's also
but doesn't have the long neck, right?
It has a neck which is like semi-long, between a zebra and a giraffe. So before a giraffe had a long neck, it had to be a zebra, or an okapi. Now the thing is that how and why would the giraffe develop, and under what circumstances would he develop such a long neck? That's the big question. That's the core question. So you have to think in a reverse kind of logic, in the way that, let's imagine that it probably developed a long neck to reach the leaves to survive. That's probably what happened.
Yeah.
That's the kind of logic behind it. And then you have to think, okay, let's imagine that there is a season, a very dry season, and there is less and less food for this pre-giraffe, and he's getting under stress, right? Emotional stress to survive, okay? And he tries to reach for the remaining leaves, which are difficult, more and more difficult to reach.
Higher and higher up,
higher and higher up to the point that there is almost nothing left, and he's getting more and more hungry, which is of course creating more and more intense emotions.
That's right.
Okay? So now, if this circumstance would happen once in a lifetime of this okapi, then probably he wouldn't develop.
You wouldn't see the evolution we see. Yeah.
It would go. He would go on with his life, and things would be nice and fine, and so forth and so forth. So that was not the case. So this means that these circumstances happened frequently.
Yes.
The stress was frequent. Okay. So and there was, of course, it was life-threatening, which means that the emotions were of a very high intensity. Right. Okay. So, and finally, there's one other aspect which is important. That giraffe, or that pre-giraffe, was very much focused on the food.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you consider the complete story, then you can, from that, let's say, analyze and come to the criteria which are important to program your subconscious mind, because that's what exactly happened with the giraffe.
That's right.
So, and that's how I came to this acronym, FIFI, which is the name of the giraffe. And that stands for frequent, intense, focused intention.
I love that.
Let me repeat that, because every word is very important. It's frequent, intense, focused intention. Okay? So that means that the frequency is important. The intensity is important, because if it's not important, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Right? And then it needs a focus, a specific focus on a specific target. Okay. And of course, there is the intention. Okay. So these four criteria can be used to reprogram your subconscious mind. It's the same process. And that's what I'm using in my mental transformation animations. I'm specifically integrating these four concepts in mental rehearsal animations so that it can, let's say, solve your limiting beliefs,
right?
Change your habitual thinking, improve your self-image, and even it can improve your technical skills. You can even develop your technical skills.
I'm fascinated by all this. So this morning I've been working with my 10-year-old. He's developed a bit of a I don't want to say a slouch or a hunch, because they're strong words, but when the pandemic hit, he was stuck in front of the screen and was not happy about it, and so this kind of, rolling of the shoulders forward and the head comes forward, and from growing, he's developed a bit of a, his posture he's got a head forward thing going on. And I'm like, dude, I've been working with him for months now, but this morning, and we're starting to break through. It's so hard to change it. 10-year-olds, God, if I could just whisper in his ear when he's sleeping, I might be better off. But, trying to get him to physically become aware at all times that his head is forward and not above his neck and spine where it's supposed to be, it's a tremendous challenge, because 10-year-olds are, have a natural way of being kind of unconscious. They just, they're just going through, and my 10-year-old his focus is very wide, and he's very easily distracted. He's kind of got a way of taking everything in at once, but that keeps him very if you're like talking to him, you got to make sure that he's with you and not with 27 other things that he's got going on in his little head. But I told him the story of FIFA this morning, so that he realizes that the more he can make this a priority, the more often he can remind himself all the time throughout the day to bring his shoulders back and let his posture straighten out, that his body is going to respond and start to pick up the slack quicker, and he's going to have to think about it less. And I told him the story of FIFA, the giraffe, and how FIFA ended up with this big, gorgeous, beautiful neck that also allows the species to thrive and survive and eat a part of the food supply that nobody else can reach. No, not one other animal can reach that tall. And so he was tickled by it, and he was practicing good posture the whole way to school. So there's an application, and this, it's vast. It's very much can be applied to a great many things that are happening right now, not just with the individual, but in the collective as well. So I think it's such an amazing insight that you came to, and there's a ton of science to back it up. I was just going over your chapter when you talk about how intentionality is, how important it is, and how, genes are operating options modulated by input from the environment, and that results in behaviors. And so people who think that this is all kind of philosophy are behind the curve, because this is science now. And it's the truth is it's always been science. It's just we haven't, epigenetics and everything else that we're learning is only catching up to what many people have known. But the scientific community isn't always on the edge of the most progressive and breakthrough ways of thinking. But absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to share that, and thank you, because I think that he really enjoyed FIFA and that he understood it right away.
I'm happy to hear that FIFI is already having some benefits
yes.
for people. And in fact, you're very right. I mean, even on the, let's say, cellular level, this kind of concept is, it's also active on a micro scale, so in fact, most of these concepts are universal, right? So coming back to the fear, the thing is that when you understand the FIFI concept, then you understand how the media, with repetition, because they use repetition.
Oh yeah.
Right? They use intense emotions, and they make sure you're focused.
That's right.
And there is a certain intention, of course. Okay. So, in fact, the media is using these concepts to program the subconscious mind of humanity. It's as simple as that.
And there's catastrophic danger inherent in that, because of the way we think, because of the way we create our reality, and the way that reality comes from our previous experience, so that we're being indoctrinated with fear our whole lives. And I've been thinking about this for so long, and so to see you put it on paper in such an academic and awesome way, it was just really mind-blowing. But when your favorite show on Netflix is Pandemic, or Murder by Numbers, and you're constantly watching the news, and what's happening in the news? Oh, I don't know, pandemics and murders and war. And, there's a direct correlation between what we're creating on this earth and what we're being programmed is life on earth. Can you imagine if ETs were flying by the planet and they were like, well, I don't know if I want to visit. Let's see what's going on in the broadcasts. And they just tuned into the news. Do you think that they would stop at this planet, or would you keep going if you saw the news here? I would keep going and never pull back around to this part of the Milky Way again. I would be like, we're out of here. This is a terrible place to vacation.
Absolutely. But that's an interesting idea, because once you are not an actor anymore in this virtual reality, when you look at the story more in an objective way, what is the camera picking up? Okay, because the camera is objective, right? Now the thing is that it also depends what the camera is focusing on and what perspective. But still, the camera is objective and is exactly giving a representation of what's going on of a certain event. And once you have a tape of it or recording, you can watch it 10 times, it's not going to change. The thing is that we are getting stories about events on a daily basis. We are not present there. It's a story about something which happened, so it's already in the past anyway. And it's a subjective story with the focus on the fear and the tragedy and the drama on a permanent base. And that is only an isolated event of everything what's going on in the world. And then you have to consider that there are much more dramatic events going on which are not covered.
Right.
You see?
Exactly.
So
and much more important, and actually much more truthful, more realistic, I should say, like, the reality of what's happening isn't in the news. Not ever. It hasn't been for a long time.
It isn't. It isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't. There's also a very interesting element, topic which you tackled initially, was about the obstacles of people or sports people, athletes, or whatever, to improve their performance, or to, let's say, to have a kind of a top performance based on their actual capacities. Okay, because that's what you basically want. You have a certain skill set or whatever, talent or certain physical abilities or intelligence, whatever, and of course you want to capitalize on that to the maximum, to realize your full potential, right? So the blockages are mostly in the subconscious mind, and the thing is that it boils down to lack of coherence. And you can explain that, and you can see a pattern, for instance, of let's say poor people winning the lottery. You hear that a lot. There's poor people and they win a lottery, like millions and millions, and all of a sudden they are rich. And what happens is that frequently, after a few years, they have lost almost everything. And people wonder why. I mean, how is this possible?
Right.
And the thing is that it is related to the discoherence between their conscious image and their subconscious image. Now, their conscious image is, we are rich. I mean, we have millions in the bank, we are rich, okay? But the subconscious, in their subconscious mind, they're still poor.
Right.
That hasn't changed, right? So the thing is that the subconscious mind, as you know, is like for 95% determining what you do, what you think, and of course the RAS, the reticular activating system, is attracting specifically what fits the image of the subconscious mind, your self-image of the subconscious mind.
That's right.
So, and that's what they call the law of attraction. And sometimes it's not really explained in the right way, because it's basically a functionality of the subconscious mind and the RAS.
Right. Well, that's why people who learn about the law of attraction, then they go out and try to, play with it. They're like, God, this doesn't work, because they're, because somebody forgot to tell you how it works.
Absolutely. First of all, they need the FIFI concept to make it work.
Right.
So the thing is that these poor people, in a certain way, their RAS, which of course influencing their perception, is going to attract specifically the people and recognize the circumstances which will enable the subconscious mind to confirm its self-image of being poor. That's what's happening. You see?
Right.
And as long as there is a conflict between your self-image in the subconscious mind and what you think about yourself in the conscious mind, as long as there's a conflict, you have no chance whatsoever.
No, because you're what is being drawn to your field, what is being brought into your life is going to be aligned with the truth, the 95% of what's really going on, not the 5% that is trying to, you're trying to grow a rose in a concrete parking lot, and that's great, but you got to find a way to get through the concrete first, or it's not going to happen for you. You're going to end up back where you started. You see this all the time with, people who unfortunately have tragic events happen to them, in their earlier part of their life. And then as they get older, they begin to prepare for the worst. And what happens to them? Most of the time, the worst happens to them, and they're prepared. They've come to expect it. And even though they say, I just can't wait for this year to be over, next year it has to be better than this year, really what they're expecting is more of the same. They're not really expecting, things to be better, and so they're not going to experience things as better, because our intention and our idea about something is going to shape how we experience it naturally. So anybody who wants to argue that these two things have nothing to do with each other, just imagine how much your expectations, your imagination about something affects your experience of it. And when you decide that, all right, I'm going to have a good time no matter what happens most of the time? You have a pretty good time, right? You just say, fuck it. If you go and you're like, this is going to suck. I really hope it doesn't suck. And you're, white knuckling this notion that this has to be a certain way or it's screwed. What you're going to go and you're going to be usually disappointed and upset and angry that you went. So to say there's no correlation is crazy. It's like
there is a strong correlation, and this also relates to hidden agendas. I mean, the hidden agenda is something which mostly comes from your education when you're younger.
Yes,
things which are not allowed. This is not good. You shouldn't be stupid, for instance.
Right.
Those are stupid things.
Don't ask stupid questions.
So, and that's getting programmed, of course, in the subconscious mind that it's really bad to do something like that.
Right.
And as a result of that, as a compensation, later on in life, these children, when they're older, they're compensating this by behavior, by the opposite behavior.
Right.
So they will give the impression that they are clever. They will use complicated, difficult vocabulary and words like that. You see, as a compensation for not being allowed to be stupid. Okay,
right.
And then logically, their focus through the RAS again is.
Tell everyone what the RAS is. Tell what that stands for.
Is what they call reticular activating system. It's part of. It's a system in the brain. It's an area in the brain which acts as a kind of a filter. It is filtering what you perceive, this filtering process is based on certain criteria, and the criteria are that it's looking for, everything which is in coherence with its subconscious beliefs and its subconscious and your subconscious self-image and all these kind of things. And so it's filtering your perception. And this means that if, for instance, like you say, you go to a party and you say it's going to suck, you're pre-programming your mind there, right. Your RAS, that is going to suck. And because you're so convinced about that, because it sucked before probably. So when you come to that party, your RAS is going to draw your attention specifically to everything which sucks,
That's right. That's right.
That's how it works.
That's exactly right.
And that's how you create your virtual reality. Because it's your subconscious mind, which is drawing your attention specifically to this, let's say, fragmented, isolated parts of reality.
Right. And so what happens when people habitually and unconsciously start to use the RAS to look for things that suck, to look for things that are scary, then we develop kind of a problem in mass as a society. And I think that's largely in part what we're seeing unfold today with what's happening, what's been happening, because there it is. So imagine now being unconscious of the fact that your tendency is to always look for that. What's your experience going to be?
Well, absolutely. And it takes scientific studies show that it takes about 6 months to create a kind of hypnosis, that people are like hypnotized, and that then evolves to psychosis. They are psychotic. So that's basically there's scientific evidence of this process. So it's very frightening. And the problem, of course, again, is that people are not conscious about that at all. They don't understand this process. So when I refer back to a brain upgrade for brain pandemics, the book I'm currently writing is specifically targeting mainly this issue. I think the most important insight that people can get from this book is specifically what we've been talking about, how they are living in a virtual reality and how they are being forced in this kind of psychosis. which is limiting the rational mind to work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you have experienced that when you sometimes talk to people and try to explain them something about the situation. I mean, everybody I talk about who has a higher consciousness has this experience. They say, I mean, people, I mean, they don't listen, they become aggressive.
Very aggressive, very defensive, very, which is, you know, the anger at the notion, you know.
Yes, it's the typical, what you are getting is the flight, fight, freeze reaction. Either people are going to freeze, they're not going to react, okay, like that. You have people like that, they stay apathic, they don't listen, they do anything.
That's the majority, probably,
Then you have the fighters, which are going to immediately become aggressive. Why? The reason is that they are in a comfort zone of virtual reality where they feel safe. And what you're going to do when you are, let's say, when you're offering them a new paradigm or new insight, which is, let's say, confronting them, or which is in fact diagonally opposed to their inner belief systems, then that's already in the first instance, it's creating resistance from the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is going to reject that. Secondly, there's an ego problem. Because you are in a certain way giving them the impression that they know nothing. So that they are clueless, which they are, of course.
In a great many ways. No, I mean, not that they're clueless, but the clues that they have decided to look into and follow they're false. So it's not that they're clueless. It's that all the clues that they've picked up have been on the wrong line of thought, the wrong path, you know.
Precisely. So you have these two issues to cope with. When you want to bring new knowledge and insights to people, you have to realize that with your information, there's going to be conflicts between the subconscious belief systems, which are programmed in their subconscious mind so for so many years and sometimes for generations. You know? And then the self-image, because in a lot of cases you get this kind of ego clash. And of course, when you get an ego clash, there is no coherence. You're not connected anymore. I mean, the bigger the ego is, the less you are connected with somebody or something. So first, you need the connection with people. Okay, you need an empathy. You need to trust. You need this kind of safe environment. That's the most important thing when you want to convey a certain message to people. So it has to be safe. The moment that it's not safe anymore, when you start attacking their inner belief systems, and you will get the resistance. So it's not easy to tackle that, because in the fight, as I already explained, in the fight, the primitive brain is working and the rational mind is not working anymore. So whatever scientific evidence and facts and statistics and information you're going to bring to them, they are not even able
they're going to accept,
analyze it or to accept it.
That's right.
Not at all. So it's a very difficult issue and challenge to solve. And the second problem that you encounter is that the subconscious mind is working in a completely different frequency than the conscious mind, as you know, right? So where the conscious mind is working into the beta brain waves, your subconscious mind is working into, let's say, the low alpha theta brain waves. So you have a communication problem with the subconscious mind. And that's why it's very difficult. And you see people going to all sorts of courses and seminars and reading books and whatever. I mean, they're doing really massive efforts, right? But the thing is that as long as they are not changing their inner belief systems and their limiting belief systems and their whatever comfort thinking and certain habits, they're never going to be able to
spinning their wheels. No, I know.
Yeah, they will never escape from this endless orbit in which they are. And this endless orbit is characterized by having a certain experience or situation. I mean, I call this the 6 E's, and it's also mentioned in the chapter. It's a quite interesting concept because it covers, in fact, everything you think, everything you do, everything you decide is based on this 6E concept. So it's really universal for everything. And that's why it's so interesting as a base, So it starts with an event, which is the first E, something happens, okay?
Right.
So when something happens, you have a certain experience. That's the second E,
Right. That comes after the event. Right.
You have a certain perception of it, okay? From that perception, you are evaluating. That's the next E. And that evaluation, together with this experience, is creating certain emotions. Okay, and we are emotional beings, as you know. So these emotions are then creating or having a certain effect on you, which could be your behavior, or you could freeze or whatever.
Right.
Okay? So you have then this effect, and this effect, of course, is creating a new event, a new situation. Right now, the thing is that most people it's a cycle. Okay, it's a cycle. It's like an orbit. It's an orbit. You can compare it with an orbit. And a lot of people are stuck in this orbit. Why? Because they have a certain situation, a certain event, to which they are automatically, let's say they have an automatic perception through the RAS, a certain experience, okay, is the same thing, which means that they have the same experience, the same perception, the same evaluation, the same emotion, and logically, the same effect, which is the same behavior.
Right.
So they are stuck in this endless orbit of the same.
Right.
And still, these people believe that they can change their performance or their life or whatever by repeating this same cycle all the time. I mean, that's what Einstein said. It's insane to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect another result.
That's right.
Is insanity.
And what the other thing that I've been really kind of acutely aware of, especially in the last 4 or 5 months, I've been doing a lot of research and learning about MK Ultra and about the 4 preceding government programs where they really experimented and studied the effects of trauma on the brain and how they could use it to manipulate people. And of course, it came from and originated in World War II. The Germans were doing all kinds of sick studies on people, on the Jews, and then when Operation Paperclip went into effect, when America and Russia started to compete over who was going to get the German scientists, because we couldn't just have them running around and we wanted to know what they knew. America got a bunch of them. I think it's a ridiculous number, but they took prominent positions, some of them in our government. It wasn't long before they had their own little office and whatnot, because we wanted what they knew, particularly with weapons technology, but also we brought their psychological warfare to our CIA and to our institutes and started to continue with the experimentation they were doing. And that experimentation was on the effects of trauma to manipulate people and have them become subservient. Now, how far they went with that is disgusting. They made people into walking programs, basically robots. Some people survived to talk about it, very few, but there were several women who survived these programs who talked about the programming that they gave them from the age of 5 and 6 years old. The government, it really is, it's atrocious, but they learned in those programs that if you can keep a person traumatized, they will forget, they will, compartmentalize. They'll learn to, so they won't remember that, oh yeah, you just did this, you just said this like 3 years ago. Now you're saying that this happening again. Don't you remember you said this last time, it turned out to be false? They don't think that. They just get scared. They just, the fear kicks in. They have that memorized response and bam, they're off to the races, or they're off to, whatever the intended response is that is fear-based. They don't think, oh my God, wait a minute, they did this 3 years ago and it was bullshit. No, there's none of that. That the trauma has set that person up and set, the manipulator up to be able to just say whatever and have them snap to it. And that's the dangerous effect of this toxic media that we're living with, and they're doing the bidding of their corporate overlords. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know about these programs, to be honest. I never looked into that, but I'm sure that they happened and they had this kind of devastating effect on people. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that people reacted that way, because if you are confronted with, let's say, unbearable pain, physical or emotional, then you get insane, you get crazy.
Right.
It's an escape. It's a kind of a survival mechanism.
It's a natural, yeah.
It's a natural survival mechanism to become insane, because that's the only way you can cope with it, to stay alive.
Right.
So that's what happens in this case. So yeah, it's quite interesting how, I mean, it's tragic that this kind of technology, of course, is abused and is used.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, I would say, on the other side, we are trying to use these principles and methods to bring consciousness to people and to upgrade their consciousness and to help them with their transformation and their self-realization and all the other positive effects which you can imagine. While the other side, of course, it's abused. But I mean, it's always like that any kind of invention or technology or idea, it's neutral. You know? True. It just depends what you are doing with it. You can use a knife to whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
To defend your family, or you can just start.
That's, and I hear people, the media as an idea is not inherently positive or negative. It's not, just like social media by nature is not, it's not the devil. It's not the problem. It's being used to, expand and make the problem bigger, unfortunately. But that is people doing that, not the program. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who use Facebook and it's all sunshine and rainbows. They don't interact in any way with other people that you could be considered negative. They talk to family, they post pictures of their cats. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like, but for people, it's just like this limited thinking. We always like to look to Germany and blame Germany for World War II. And that is just that. I mean, that's an example of what can happen when you have a whole army and a whole people, not all of them, but most of them, at least not necessarily brainwashed, but scared into apathy, which is a lot of what we're seeing today. Scared enough to be quiet and not stand up and say, this has to stop, because Hitler could have stood in front of those crowds and yelled, rah, 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 we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And the crowd could have said, this guy's fucking crazy. Let's get out of here. And that's it. It would have never, he could have never amassed the army, the power he did, if people were conscious enough to say, this is insane. This is crazy what he's talking about doing. But that's not what happened. You had a whole people who were very much supporting and making this reality happen in World War II. But we like to point our finger to Hitler and say he's the reason. Meanwhile, the United States was supplying Hitler with everything he needed. The bankers here and in England they made Hitler. I mean, they literally think Hitler reinvigorated that economy because he was good looking and he had a mustache. No, I mean, money comes from somewhere. They invested in Hitler. They wanted him to be the garrison, the shield between them and Russia, who they were afraid of. That's how Hitler came to power. Not,
of course, I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, even companies like IBM were involved. And other companies were involved supporting his whatever his
so many
Yes. So it's the problem, of course, is that history is not taught the way it
That's
should
right.
be, because everybody likes to provide his own version of history, which is fitting into the narrative or into whatever you have in your mind, and that's basically a problem, right? I mean,
yeah, it's a big problem.
It's a very big problem. Education, of course, is a massive problem when you see what's going on now. What kind of programs and concepts are.
And same people. It's the same people writing the programs.
But the problem is that people don't see the hidden agendas.
No.
They are clueless about geopolitics. They are clueless. I mean, they are unconscious ignorant. I mean, they are at that low level of consciousness about everything, which is really important. And it's also tackled in the book I'm writing. I'm specifically asking the questions: what do you know about this? And what do you know about this? And what about that? So, and do some research.
Right. Okay? Yeah.
And people don't do research because
no, and they even try to propagandize and give research a bad name. You know, did you see that?
It's funny.
It's hilarious. Oh my God. You know,
it is hilarious. I was banned from Facebook because I mentioned a scientific study. You know, I mean, they call it fake science. I mean, it's published, peer-reviewed scientific study, not from Bananistan or something, but from Sweden or something. You know, and fake news. I mean, you're banned. You know, I mean,
it's and people and what's crazy is the groups think that because a corporation has signed on to this madness and is using other corporate names to say that this is not true, that somehow that makes it valid. People can't see past that. You know, like they can't imagine that there could be this kind of agenda at play. They're so naive about the reality that we live in. And they don't want to believe it because, like you said, it makes them angry to imagine that the world they thought they were living in is not that world. That's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow.
It's very, very difficult for the simple reason that beside the fact that you're attacking their core beliefs and, of course, the comfort zone of their virtual reality, is that the truth, I mean, the world itself, as it is spinning around now, is not very nice. It's an ugly image, you see, and people don't want to leave their comfort zone.
No.
This virtual reality in which they feel safe to a certain extent. They don't want to get out of that. You can compare it with a wild animal. If you have a lion and you put him in a cage for 5 years or something, and you open the cage, the lion is not going to come out anymore because it's afraid. It's afraid of freedom.
Right. And it doesn't even know it's afraid. That's the problem.
No, precisely. And that's also, I mean, you always come back to a consciousness, a lack of consciousness. And once people have this aha moment, what you call the aha moment, you know what it means, an aha moment.
Of course,
the aha Erlebnis, as they used to call it. Once people understand that they didn't understand it, that's the most important aha Erlebnis which you can have, is that you all of a sudden understand that you didn't know it, that you didn't understand it.
Right.
So then you become conscious incompetent, conscious ignorant. At that moment, you know that you don't know anything.
Right.
You see, that's the first and vital step. And the problem is that you need to be humble in a certain way.
Right.
And you need to be willing to accept that.
That's right. And that it takes a certain amount of humility and stepping back, swallowing your ego, and just saying like, holy shit, I had no idea, you know.
Precisely. And then the next step, as you are going to start doing research and reading or whatever, or talking about it with other people, you become gradually conscious competent.
Right.
You know that you start knowing it, okay?
Right.
Which is, it's conscious competence, right? And in a certain way, that's the final step, unless you are talking about the highest level, which is what I call unconscious competence. It's a kind of, it becomes habitual.
That's right.
When it becomes habitual for you, that you would question everything, and that you're always going to research and are willing to go into the unknown,
That's right.
To step into the unknown, because it's only in the unknown that you can learn something, because the known, you already know the known, so I mean, that is what I would call unconscious competence. It's a habit, then it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
It's a habit. And once you create that habit, then it's effortless.
That's right. Like any habit becomes.
It's like your son, when you were talking to your son about his head, his posture, and things like that. The problem with your son, as you rightly say, is the fact that he's all over the place.
Right.
It's just like me. I'm also always all over the place. Sometimes my wife gets really crazy about it because I'm everywhere. But the thing is that you need to bring somebody back to the here and now.
Right.
So, because there's two aspects when you want to have change in your life. There is the conscious aspect of it,
right,
and there is the subconscious aspect.
That's right.
The subconscious aspect might be the habit of a certain posture, because you're just used to do it all the time.
Without a thought, that's become the default. Yeah.
It's the default. So there's two ways, there's two approaches which are needed to solve this kind of issues. The first one is the simplest. It's bringing people in the here and the now with specific tasks. Okay, in the here and now, which means that there needs a kind of self-monitoring.
Right. Okay.
Which of course needs a certain motivation. You need to be willing to do that. There needs to be some kind of a psychological gain or something, or a reward, so you are motivated to do that. Okay, or it needs to arouse enough positive emotions. Yeah. Or it should prevent negative emotions. Like if you keep your head like this for another year, you will get stuck like that. You will. I don't know, whatever you can invent, which is terrible. Well, I'm working on all of them. I gotta. Yeah. So that's the conscious part. And when you give this kind of tasks, it's let's say it works with what I call functional thinking and process thinking. It's being in the process with a specific task in the here and the now, which prevents your subconscious mind taking over with all these thoughts and it's going to bring you here and there out of your focus and so forth and so forth. So that's working on the here and the now with specific tasks. Okay, but and of course then there comes a new habit formation, which is of course which is a topic on itself. Right. Habit formation. It will be covered in my book to a certain extent, because basically you need people to learn how to create new habits, because otherwise they will read the book, they will try some things, but they will fail. That's why? Because they are incompetent about habits. They don't know how to create new habits. So it always boils down to the same problem: lack of awareness and unconscious incompetence. If you solve these two things, you can already solve a massive amount of challenges. That's what I told him. I said, you're learning the best lesson. He said, you're 10 years old and you're learning how to change a habit that's become unconscious. I was like, this is the greatest lesson you're ever going to learn. I don't care if it takes us, a year to solve this. We're going to solve it. But you're also learning how that when you want to change something in your environment, whether it be your body, whether it be something that you want in your life, then you have to become so conscious of it that you stop forgetting. If you want me to be quiet about it, I don't enjoy having to remind you all the time. I've been reminding you all the time for months. When you decide that it's more important for me to shut up and you remember, then you won't forget anymore. But you have to remember
more than you forget. And right now you're forgetting more than you remember. You know, I have to remind you, and then you remember. But then you go off and you play, and you're playing, or you're watching something, or you're doing something, and you forget. And then I have to come remind you. And sometimes that's really annoying to you. I told him, you know, because it is. He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, well, I know. How do you think I feel? I've been doing this for 6 months. I said, but yeah, I'm not getting frustrated, and I'm not even the one who needs this. You know, I said, but the more you can remember, the more it's going to be easier for you to forget the more you can remember. You know what I mean? It's a weird paradox.
It's about unlearning this habit, right? And then we are coming back to the subconscious mind, because his posture is specifically a subconscious issue, you know? So in order to change that, you need to have access to the subconscious mind, to this specific habit. How can you, and it's a very important topic, to neutralize bad habits or install new empowering.
That's right. Habits. So I'm getting him to, I'm like, bring the shoulders back. Just whenever you think of it, bring your shoulders back and stay like that, you know?
Yeah. But the thing is that you are fighting against the subconscious mind, which is determining for 95% what is going on. You know? So, so your fight is very difficult. And that's why there is always a dual approach in this, as I explained, in the here and the now, with specific tasks and specific triggers. You know, you can add some triggers, or you can, a trigger which is like something which reminds you of having to keep your head up.
I've become a trigger. My presence has. That's how long we've been doing.
You could use, let's say, you could have something sticking on the wall with an image or something. All sorts of things which can bring him back in the here and the now more often, which is triggering him to remind him, oh yeah, okay, you know. Things like that. So that is what you can do. There's lots of things you can do in the here and now, but that is not going to solve the subconscious problem. So. And then I'm coming to my, what I call MTAs, mental transformation animations, which I also explained in the chapter, and on which I will elaborate even further in the book, because it's so important, for the simple reason that you cannot tackle the subconscious mind with.
I'll tell everyone how you describe them in the chapter. I think it's so mental transformation animations.
Yes,
and they're a unique tool used to speed up the process of acquiring technical skills when neutralizing limiting beliefs and or other mental obstacles like habits. And MTAs use mirror neurons, and it can be used to improve any kind of technical skill or any, break out any kind of habit. And at the same time, it can be also used to eliminate negative belief systems, which are keeping you kind of stuck in those habits or places.
Precisely, absolutely. That's very well described, I can say. So basically, for these mental transformation animations, I'm using the portrait technology.
The Braintap technology.
I'm using the Braintap because with the Braintap, of course, people go much faster in deep meditation. So their brain waves are going down to the theta and the alpha zone, which is specifically the area, the frequencies of the subconscious mind.
Right.
So if you don't tune in the right frequency, it's very difficult. It's like you want to listen to a certain program on your radio, but you're not tuning into the right frequency. You're not going to hear a lot, so it's going to be difficult to communicate. So it's the same issue. So by using the Braintap, it's bringing people very fast in a state of meditation, where you don't have the interference of the logical, rational mind anymore, because the rational, logical mind is always going to sabotage you. I will give you an interesting example. I have been frustrated many years. I'm a great tennis lover. I've played 25 years of tennis. I'm a great tennis lover, and I was a fan of Sharapova. And you might remember that she struggled with her service all the time. She served so many double faults. It was just unbelievable. And over the years, nobody seemed to be able to solve that for her.
Mm.
No coach seemed to be able to solve that specific problem. And I think the main reason is that they were only working on the conscious area, on the conscious. They were probably trying to change her technique and things like that, and so forth. And it never worked.
Right.
For the simple reason is that because he had been in this cycle
so long,
of 6 E's so many times and experiencing it so many times in her career, that she created a self-image and a belief system that she was very poor in the department of serving.
Right.
And that she was serving a lot of double faults every single match.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and the problem is, because that I experienced that myself when I was playing competition in tennis, and I played competition in sports for over 45 years, is that when you're thinking, don't serve a double fault,
what's going to happen?
What is going to happen? The problem is that your subconscious mind makes no difference has no ability to understand the word no or a negation. It doesn't. No. It cannot analyze a phrase which contains no or nothing or nobody.
What you resist persists. So you have to create something new to focus.
Yes, precisely. So the moment that the subconscious mind hears double fault, says, "Oh, okay, double fault. Here you have it."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It is going to steer specifically this behavior which corresponds with what it thinks you want, which is a double fault.
Right.
It's like you say to people, "Don't think about a red elephant." I mean,
it's immediately right.
Immediately there it is,
Yeah. No, I saw one of my friends the other day was saying, "I'm not getting a cold. I'm not getting a cold. I'm not getting a cold." I said, "Hey, stop saying that right now, damn it!"
You will.
I said, "Just say I'm healthy. I'm well. I feel great. Right. I'm healthy. I'm well. I feel great. Don't say I'm not getting a cold." I was like, "That's bad idea."
So coming back to the MTAs, what are the MTAs doing? They are specifically tackling this, I would say, Sharapova problem of a limited belief system or a negative self-image, these kind of things, in the way that what I'm doing in these MTAs, first of all, I'm going to create strong positive emotions. Why? For the simple reason that it is the intensity of the emotions, is the FIFI concept, right? Mm-hmm. Which is of a massive importance to create enough, I would say, motivation for the brain to do something. Why? Because your brain is always trying to save energy.
Right.
And it takes a massive amount of energy to change a habit. So the brain always tries to shield itself from efforts.
Right. It's expedient. It's the ultimate expedient machine.
Yeah, because it's using about 20% of your energy, even though that your brain is maybe 5% of your body mass. It's taking more than 20% of your energy. So it's really, wasting a lot of energy. So, so the RAS and all these belief systems, that's why they are also so very rigid, because your brain doesn't want to waste energy on what it considers as useless stuff, So it's a shielding mechanism. So in order to break through that barrier, you need enough emotions linked to it, like FIFI, who was starving. Okay,
right.
When people are going to die, it's amazing what can change.
Right. Oh yeah. That's the fastest transformation of when they get news.
That's why you see people sometimes which are terminal in cancer, all of a sudden, they cure.
Right.
They cure like this. It's a kind of, it's unbelievable what emotions and intentions can do. You can even change your DNA.
Right.
So first of all, what I do in this MTAs, I bring very strong positive emotions. How? I ask, images and photos and small video fragments from the sports people, which are really exciting them, which are giving them very strong positive emotions, right? Okay, it could be victories or something like that and stuff like that. So once they are aroused and in this kind of a state of positive, strong emotions, then I am bringing them the visualizations of what they really want.
Right.
In Sharapova's case, that would be like she's serving aces all the time.
Right.
So I would take a few fragments of her best services and repeat them all over the time. And then I would also add audio affirmations from her, right? In which is saying, I'm the best server or whatever, all these kind of things, self-affirmations, right? So, and by doing this and repeating it all the time during such a session of an MTA, which is like half an hour, okay, you are programming, you are priming and programming, reprogramming the subconscious mind, okay? You're changing that self-belief system, that limiting self-belief system, you turn it into a positive.
That's right.
And at the same time, the mirror neurons are picking up the technique and the movements which are used to produce this perfect serve.
Yes.
You see? And so when you repeat that a number of times, specifically like in the morning or in the evenings, when your brain is most susceptible for change because you're already in a low brainwave state anyway, when you repeat that a number of times, you speed up dramatically the process of changing your negative belief system and your negative habits.
Yes.
And once you succeed that, then you create coherence between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind.
Yeah. And that's when that starts to become the habit. You know, that's when you start to bridge the gap and it starts to become more effortless. Yeah.
It's natural, and you would not have this mental images popping up anymore, that you're going to create it, that you're going to hit the double fault or something, or the story about it is going to distort it, because it's always these internal stories in your mind which are creating a problem, you know. So the thing is, when you're giving people tasks in the here and the now, like let's say concentrate on throwing the ball up and look at the ball, this kind of very simple things, you know, you're preventing the monkey mind to interfere, because the monkey mind comes from your subconscious.
That's right.
You see? So, and that is, in fact, it's a combination of these two, which is creating the best, let's say, which is the best method to tackle any kind of, I would say, problem in the sports arena, but even, I mean, in general, in life, for whatever limitations you encounter.
Right. Oh,
and
absolutely.
People forget that dimension.
They totally forget that they either go at it all in the conscious and the physical, and you know that becomes grueling. And if you don't have a way to continue to bridge the subconscious, you know, I love fighters and boxing and MMA, and I've been practicing boxing for about 6-7 years now, and I love it. I wish I started younger, but you know, I'm enjoying myself either way, and I'm just fit enough to get away with it and have some fun. So, but it's I see fighters, they reach a peak, you know, they become champion, and then they suffer a setback, an injury, or a loss, you know, and then you start to see that pattern start to repeat itself. It's very few of them can ever get back to where they were, and that has, and whether there's an injury or not, and that is, I think, many times psychological, because that physically they are no different than the person they were, but now they've been dethroned, they've been defeated, and so this incredible, accumulative, invincible, you know, powerful mindset that they went into all these other fights with has been shattered in many ways. You know, they and try as they might, other people, you know, it changes the perception of them by other people, right? So you see that many times they'll go back, they'll have a rematch, and oftentimes they'll lose that rematch again. They'll look like the fighter that lost, not the fighter that never up until that point had even come close to being defeated. And so it's just like the mindset is, and the subconscious is every bit as important as the physical part. You know, it's just, it's hard to do justice to how much it plays a part.
It is, of course, there are different factors which are playing into this kind of scenarios. And one of the factors is that it's much more easy to become number one in the world than to stay number one in the world.
That's true. Yeah.
And one of the issues is that when you are not number one, you're still an underdog to a certain extent. Okay. Once you're number one in the world, there is an expectancy from the people around you, from the crowd, from the fans, that you're going to, say, perform. I mean, keep performing at the same level. So there's a lot of pressure from external pressure and also internal pressure. Yeah. You see, because all of a sudden your image is changing. I mean, you were the underdog, and it's always easy to play as an underdog. It's much more easy to play because you have nothing to prove. Right. Okay? But if you're, let's say, if you need to win, if you're expected to win, all of a sudden you're not the underdog anymore. Right. And everybody starts chasing you. Yeah. Before you were chasing the other guys, you know, and all of a sudden it's a completely reverse role. So the psychology is completely different, and a lot of people cannot cope with that. It's hard to maintain. I don't care who you are. And it's also related, of course, to their self-image, because their self-image for years and years was not, I am the champion, I am the best. No, they were fighting and struggling along the way. So again, there is a subconscious limitation. Yeah, a lot of factors there. And there is also another factor that at a certain moment in time, well, I mean, what I experienced when I deal with goal setting, when people are setting their goals, specifically sports people, athletes, they have a tendency only to look at their sports career. I mean, that's their focus. I mean, that's it, you know. What are they? What they focus on their what? On their career, on their sport. Oh yeah. Okay? So that is of a massive importance, and all the rest is much less important, right? So the thing is that they only have this, right? And when the problem occurs, when they have like an injury or something, okay, I mean, they have nothing to fall back on. It's like their life is empty. There's nothing. Yeah, so, no, it's not a good place to be. Yeah. So when I'm talking to people about goal setting, and they say, okay, what's most important in your life? And they say, oh, yeah, it's career, it's money, it's this, that. Then I say, what about health? Yeah. What about family? You know. Well, yeah. What about family? But what about health? What if you don't have good health anymore? They might say, yeah, family, because I'm a family man. I take care of my family. Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. But if you're not in a good health, how can you take care of your family? Yeah. So my main priority is good health. Yeah. Because if I'm not in good health, I'm not able to support people. That's right. Because I wouldn't have the energy, the mental energy, the physical energy, and so forth, to take care of my family, or to take care of my business and all these kind of things, you know. So or to work out and so forth. So that's another, let's say, lack of awareness of people. It's a form of tunnel vision, you know. Yeah, it's a tunnel vision. And then, of course, they can, when they have an injury or their career is ended abruptly for one or another reason, there is a vacuum. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My God. And then they get depressed and they go on drugs and stuff like that. So it's very important that you are aware of other important factors and aspects in your life, and that you are not one-sided, working just only on one area. Very true. Because that's going to create issues later on in your life anyway. Right. Johan, tell me about the Mito Exito. How do I say it? Mito Exito? Mito? Mito or Mito, Mito Exito. Yeah. Mito Exito. Mito, you could call it Mito Exito. Yeah, this looks so cool. Tell me about this. I want to get some. I mean, it's Mito Exito I mean, it's coming from mitochondria, excitation. Okay, the mitochondria is the powerhouses of the cell, right? Which are creating, I mean, the biggest amount of your energy, which you're using for everything you do, right? And Excito is exciting them, which means, let's say, making them more performant.
Right.
So it's a program. This Mito Exito. On one side, it's a supplement, which I designed based on my research on everything which is like anti-aging and mitochondrial function, because aging is a lot related to reduced mitochondrial functioning, right? And also in the brain, that's a big problem. So if you don't have enough energy, you cannot detoxify anymore. You don't have, let's say, energy.
That's when it all goes downhill. That's right.
Yes, it's all going downhill. So the mitochondria are very important. So once I had done this research, and I was also in contact with some people in the United States, which created a specific supplement of which they gave the formulation to me, which was quite interesting formulation, and also based on scientific research. I added to that a few other ingredients based on my research to create a supplement, which I call Mito Exito. So what it does is that it's with the same muscle mass, it's increasing the power potential of that muscle mass by stimulating the mitochondrial function.
I see.
Right. So it's a supplement, and in fact, it's my personal formulation. It is not on the market. I have not marketed it yet.
Okay.
And it's part of what I call the PEP protocol. And this PEP protocol stands for Power Edge Protocol. And it includes this supplement, but it also includes quite a few extra biohacks. Okay. Which are basically increasing the energy potential of your body in various ways, right? One of these ways, for instance, is by using photo biomodulation. Right. And I remember you had a podcast with
Francisco.
Yes, with Francisco about that, which I watched with great interest.
Yeah,
and
he's great.
In fact, I'm in contact with him because he's always also involved with Patrick Porter, as you know.
Yes.
And I contacted him that I was going to forward him some research I have, and also some information which might be interesting for him to look into. Yeah. And it relates to increasing the power potential of your cells through photobiomodulation.
Yes.
And there is one, I would say, important aspect which is not really very well known. Even the people which are working in this field are not aware of the specific structured water.
Yeah, you mentioned this, the fourth phase of water, right?
The fourth phase of water. I have done some water research for many, many years. And I'm also in contact with a very interesting professor, which is called Professor Pollack, who has an institute in the United States, specifically already studying structured water for many, many, many years. He wrote a few books about it. One of them is Cells and Gels, The Engines of Life. It's a very, very interesting book. And from that book and some other research, I learned that water carries energy. And in one of his experiments, Professor Pollack showed how from water you can light a light bulb.
Right.
By creating polarity. And how do you create polarity is by using what you call a hydrophilic surface. When you have a hydrophilic surface, then the water tends to, let's say, create polarity. It creates layers. It creates a layer which is like a liquid crystal, which has a specific kind of structured water with a negative charge. And then you have the bulk water, which has the positive charge. And so if you have this kind of charge separation, you create a battery. That's the concept of a battery.
Wow.
Yeah. So the same happens in your body. In your cells, these proteins and these mitochondria, they all are covered with this specific EZ water, it's called EZ layer, right? Okay. So this structured water. And according to Pollack's theories and his research, he explains that cells are specifically using this charge separation to create energy inside the cell. Right? Isn't that interesting? And the most interesting part is that if you're stimulating your cells with specific frequencies of the infrared spectrum, then this layer, this EZ layer, is increasing. It's getting bigger and bigger, which means obviously that the bigger that layer is, the
more energy,
the stronger your battery becomes.
Right.
So you're creating a kind of a potential energy
that's awesome.
in the cells with photobiomodulation. If you know what frequencies to use.
Yeah.
You see, and that is part of the PEP protocol. But there's a few other biohacks. So if you combine all these different biohacks with a supplement, then I am convinced that I'm 100% convinced that, let's say, take a golf player,
right?
And he hits, I don't know how many yards these guys are hitting, let's say 200 yards.
Right.
With that protocol, in 1 month time, they will hit at least 5 to 10% further.
Yeah.
Simple.
I mean, it's science, it's mathematics, it's that's what it comes down to. So I mean, that sounds awesome. I would love to try the protocol.
I mean, for any kind of athlete, when it comes to a sprinter, a boxer which can punch harder,
that's why I want to do it.
A tennis player which can hit
a stamina, and faster. Conditioning.
It all boils down to more power from the same mass, from the same muscle mass, because of course you can build up your muscle mass and get more strength, but then of course you have more weight and stuff like that. And whatever, but you don't need that when you use this PEP protocol. You can just increase your physical performance with 5 to 10% without steroids. I mean, with just natural stuff.
Right. It's there. It's just untapped. I mean, it's just a matter of kind of, for lack of a better word, reconditioning those cells to hold more power, to be bigger batteries for you. And we already have it. It's in our DNA. It just basically needs to be activated.
Absolutely. You're just going to, let's say, you have a natural process and you're going to enhance it by providing it with the right frequencies.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
It's amazing. That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
You'll have to keep me posted on how that's going with with getting that product to market, because that could be huge. I mean, I don't think it would take very long to show how effective it is, and I think that it would be widely popular once it caught on.
Well, absolutely, because it's natural. I mean, there's no forbidden substances in there and so forth. So, but of course, bringing a product to the market, it's not that easy.
No, I know.
I have not done anything with that PEP protocol for the moment. I just developed it. But it's also about time and energy, and finances and things like that, and patents and so forth. What I would like to do is to find a few athletes from various sport disciplines who just want to test it out, and to see what happens.
Yeah, that'd be the best way to do it. So somebody who already has a team in place who is doing the measurements, who's checking their speed, who's gauging their strength, so that you have a baseline already there. So that saves time.
A golf player or something, or a sprinter. I mean, and then see how his performance is evolving in a month's time. It would be quite interesting. And of course, if that would be successful, and I'm very convinced it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a winner, of course. I mean, that's everybody will need it.
Of course, I think so. Yeah. Who wouldn't? Because it's a natural way to, who doesn't want more energy? Who doesn't want to feel like they can do more? I mean, it would be, I think it would be widely used. And then, you'd have people who want to use it more intensely, athletes and all that stuff. But that's awesome. I mean, very cool.
And that all came from my personal experience 15 years ago when some of my friends and family members died of cancer, and I really started looking into cell metabolism.
Yeah, cell metabolism. Yeah.
And because cell metabolism also in cancer is a massive
it's a huge factor.
It's a huge factor, and it's also relating to mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the causes of cancer. Why? Because the cells, if they're not able anymore to create energy through the mitochondria, they go into regression.
Right.
They go into regression. They are starting fermenting sugars.
Right.
Instead of burning them with oxygen and creating ATP, they're going to create ATP by fermenting sugars, like a bacteria is doing. You know? So cells are going into regression, and because they go into regression, they become egocentric.
Right.
So they're thinking only about their own survival.
That's right.
And what is happening when you're egocentric? You're not coherent anymore with your environment. You're not in contact anymore.
It loses touch with its environment.
And that's how that creates a cancer.
That's how we get sick and die. Now look as above, so below. Look at what's happening in our society. Look at what happened in the last 2 years.
And that's what I said. When my main philosophy, one of my main philosophies is that, or let's say insights, is that nature is the repetition of a very few laws, like Emerson says, right? And the challenge is to know these laws. We know some of them.
Yeah.
We are limited. I mean, as humans, we are limited because we only see 3 dimensions and we only see a very small spectrum of what's going on, and we hear a small spectrum of everything. So we are very, very limited in our perception already of the universe. So we have to be a little bit more humble.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people around which think they know everything and they are so intelligent and stuff like that, They might be to a certain extent, but what do we know?
Yeah.
There was a Nobel Prize winner, I remember, he mentioned that to his knowledge, we knew something like 3% of what was going on.
Right.
But that was even based on his perception. Maybe it's just 1,000%. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would bet on the under.
Me as well. I mean, by my experience, and it's also mentioned in my book several occasions, is that the more you understand and know, the more you understand that you don't know not.
That's right.
It's like you're in regression all the time while you're learning new stuff.
That's right. It's a paradox, but it's a beautiful paradox.
It is a paradox. It's a paradox. And we shouldn't forget that knowledge is evolving faster than what you can learn.
That's right.
So I mean, you cannot keep up with.
No, but you have to be humble enough to know that, and realize that change truly is the one constant. That things are always changing, and so even with, however much you imagine, it's changing. You know what I mean? So you can't remain stagnant. You have to be open, and be thinking and be asking questions, and also be brutally self-aware. It's one of the things I talk about a lot on my podcast. Shakespeare said, "Know thyself." He knew what he was talking about in a lot of ways. Heart, mind, word, deed, and action. Know thyself. That was and when you align those things, then there's no longer that separation. That's when the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere are in communication. That's when the thing that they have so many slogans for when this happens, they're like, luck is when preparation meets, all this happy horse shit. But what they're saying is that in that moment, things have come together in a way they hadn't before. And it looks like magic. It looks like luck, but it's not. It's a combination of all those things that have coalesced. Yeah. But man, this is, I could talk to you for hours, Johan, because your paper is just, it's incredible. Am I allowed to share that paper? Can I, or is it not, because is it not published yet, or can I share it? Because I'm going to put it in the video description if I can.
It is published.
Okay, cool.
The book is available on IGI Global. I sent a link. The thing is that we have, it's an altruistic work.
Right.
So this means that we have given the copyrights to IGI Global.
Okay.
So from that perspective, I have sent you that.
I'm going to include a link to that in my video description, and also, any other links I can find to your information and your work. And, we look forward to when your books are coming out. And I'm just excited that you have, this chapter that you wrote is just incredible. And it speaks to a lot of the dangers that we are in today as a society, in this cycle of thought that we are in, cycle of thought and feeling, and how when you aren't aware as a society that you are replicating, catastrophe with your thought process.
Absolutely.
Then you're really you kind of put yourself on a runaway train, and so the more we can become conscious and change tracks, flip the switch, change the tracks so that we're no longer headed towards that kind of destiny, but we have decided we're going to create our own. We can really start to, improve things for people and for our planet, which is, both things are, not living nearly in a state of homeostasis and joy as they should be.
I totally agree with you. I think it's already 25 years ago that I came to the conclusion that humanity is facing two major problems. One of the problems, the first problem, is they're not connected anymore, mm-hmm. and they're not conscious. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about connection, I'm specifically talking about coherence. Mm-hmm. We're all divided. There's all these polarities,
right,
which have been created just to split us up in small groups. Why?
That's
because
right.
you can control a small group much more easy. You don't want.
No.
Nobody of the powers, which are ruling the world for the moment,
right.
whatever you call them, doesn't really. The name doesn't matter. But these people, or whatever they are, they don't want coherence and consciousness. They're fighting against coherence and consciousness.
That's right.
For eons already, probably. So and the book specifically is tackling these two issues. Mm-hmm. So it is about consciousness and these 4 levels of consciousness. Yeah. And it's about connecting again, first of all, with ourselves, because people lose connection with themselves.
That's
and
right.
How can you connect with somebody else if you're not even connected with yourself? It's impossible. People are permanently communicating with virtual images, which they are projecting on people, which is just like communicating with an avatar. It's adding up to the virtual reality. They are living in a virtual reality, and they are communicating with an avatar or somebody which they made up in their mind.
Right.
And the other party is doing the same.
Right. Right. And then they wonder why everything's a mess. There is no authenticity.
And then you wonder, why is there no coherence in the world anymore?
No, it's and people have lost touch. If you are not in touch with your intuition, then you're further away from your empathy than you imagine.
The heart is there.
The heart is the key, right? And one of the most underestimated and powerful aspects of what's missing in our society is this heart-centered consciousness. And that's the other thing that Johan mentions in this chapter. And it absolutely, it's so right on. You know, I'm only sitting here because about 12, 13 years ago, I had a real problem opening this area. I was an actor who couldn't open his heart. Yeah, I didn't. It was tough going, as you can imagine. But I needed to figure out why, and why I was so, you know, kind of stuck, and that led me to where I am. You know, I continued to find ways to open my heart and recondition this physiological response that I had from trauma as a child, you know, that closed me down. And since I've done that, you know, my world has gone from this big, you know, to a 360-degree experience. And it's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean,
you know,
I agree 100% with that. And I even want to elaborate on that. When you are in coherence, when your heart is in coherence, right, you are connecting. You are connecting with everything around you, because I mean, first of all, it's the dominance of the left. I mean, of the logical rational brain,
right,
of course, which is also causing a problem. We're always thinking and thinking, and we are enslaved to thinking. You know?
Yeah,
we forgot about the heart.
mental
you know?
gymnastics. Yeah.
Yes, and when you are in a state of heart coherence, I'm not talking about heart rate variability. I'm talking about heart rate coherence, the coherence of the heart, which is when it synchronizes with other rhythms in the body.
Right.
Because if systems are synchronized, they function better, right?
Yes.
And heart coherence is when the rhythm of the heart is changing according your breathing pattern and your blood pressure.
Right.
Because it goes up and down, right? You breathe in, you breathe out, and so forth. When these three curves are synchronized, are in phase,
right,
then you get physical coherence in your body, right? Heart rate coherence. And at that moment, your intuition starts to work better. Your antenna is activated.
Right.
And if your antenna is activated, you're connected with the collective unconscious, with the cosmic energies, with everything.
And if you want to know what that looks like in a laboratory, you put an EEG on, and you would see that your brain looked like the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree during Christmas, lit up at night. You know, that's the difference. Yes. And if you looked at your brain most of the other times of the day, you know, it wouldn't be very luminous.
No, the heart has the heart has a much bigger effect on the brain than the brain has on the heart.
Absolutely.
So it's very important.
Big misconception.
This heart rate coherence, but I mean, that's a completely different subject.
We'll have to have another podcast for that.
So there's many other things that we can discuss about. Of course, I mean, it seems that we have a lot of similar interests.
I know, we definitely do. We'll have to talk again, Johan, because this has been fantastic. I'm so excited to talk to someone like you, who's lived it, been doing the work, and I mean, your ideas and the things that you're doing are awesome. So I look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you. I'm so glad Hunter found you. You know, definitely we're on the same mission, and I love what you're doing. And you know, I'll be in touch for sure. I'll let you know when we're going to get this video out, and if we need anything from you for it, I'll reach out to you. But this has been awesome. I'm so grateful for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, I mean, it was, I mean, absolutely an amazing experience for me as well. I have to say this, but this is my first podcast ever.
Oh, cool. I'm honored. All right. Very cool.
So it was a very interesting first experience for me to do this kind of podcasts. It's also like a little test, you know. I mean, am I able to express?
Oh yeah, you did great.
To express in a foreign language. I mean, it's like my third language. My second language is French, you know. So, but anyway, I'm very delighted that I was a guest in your guest here. And of course, I'm thanking Hunter and indirectly also Patrick Porter, because it was
Dr. Porter.
It was Patrick who initially connected me with Hunter, and then brought a topic that
cool.
That you might be interested in a podcast with me. So I'm very grateful for that. It's always
he's the best.
It's always important to be very grateful. It's one of the
absolutely
most important feelings that we sometimes forget about.
Agreed. It's the most important one by far. Dr. Porter continues to connect people and things and neurons and everything under the sun. I got to send him an email and say thank you. And but Johan, thank you again for your time. It's been real. We're gonna have to do it again because there's so much to, we'll get real. We'll carve out some time and we'll focus on one or two things and really dive deep into them. That'd be awesome.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. I love to go deep.
Cool.
Because while you do it, you get new insights and new reflections, and it's always enriching you. Even if you know stuff and you repeat it,
totally,
it gets deeper, sink deeper in, and that's always important, So
very true.
So thanks again, and I'm looking forward to further contact and to maybe another session, whenever.
Absolutely.
Another topic. I'm continue working on my book, and
keep us posted with that too.
When it's finalized, I will send you guys a PDF. Even before it's published, so you can just read through it and maybe give me some feedback or whatever.
I'd be honored to. That'd be great.
We will do that. We'll do that. Okay.
Okay, my friend. Thank you, Johan. I appreciate it. You have a good one, and you have a good night because it's night there. Yeah.
No, it's evening, but that's okay.
You take care. Thanks again.
Yes, take care. Have a nice day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.